So, hello, my name is Omar Sanchez. I'm with the Proctor Oral History Program. Today's date is October 9th, 2020. We're doing this interview on Zoom. Do you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Dr. David Canton. I'm Director of African American Studies Program at the University of Florida.
Cool. So can you tell me a little bit about where you were born, how you grew up,
Okay, great question. So I was born in the Bronx, June 17th, 1968, Bronx, New York. My dad's from the U.S. Virgin Islands of St. Thomas. My mother's from the West Indies. They came to New York, I think 62 or 63, came to the city. My mother's an immigrant. My dad's a citizen, born in the Virgin Islands. High school, my dad's a high school dropout, ninth grade, went to the military for 4 years. My mother finished high school, clerical skills. That was big in the 60s and the 70s, then stenography and all that stuff. So pretty much I grew up working class. I grew up in the Bronx. We moved to this place called Co-op City. It was the largest subsidized apartment complex in the world. We just turned 50 last year. As I tell people, this is what affordable housing looks like. Co-op City. My dad's there today, still 50 years later, 3-bedroom in the Bronx for $1,200 a month, utilities included. So the reality is that that should be housing for that's what made me who I am, right? That he had a job, benefits, affordable housing, decent school. That's the basic promise in America. So my success was based on that model, in terms of stable work. He was a state worker, pension, benefits. And as he says, if you don't have a profession or a skill, become a city or state worker. So like him, many of the African Americans, federal government, state, city, that was a blue collar, middle class. A blue collar, I say working class. There's a relative difference, working class. I mean, we all work for our money, but in terms of what I was exposed to, unfortunately in my household, my dad in the military learned about racism, where in St. Thomas, he read the Pittsburgh Courier, famous black newspaper. He had a racial consciousness growing up in the islands. He remembered Emmett Till. He used to read about this, the civil rights stuff in the South, then became military, got exposed to it. So in my household, through him, Marcus Garvey, Nation of Islam, Malcolm X, all these African-American male figures, racial consciousness. So that's part that formed this. My mother, on the hand, was British West Indies. So for her, Elvis Presley, she liked Elvis Presley. My dad hated him, British, we just hated him, My dad was more open to U.S. race, African-American cultural. I mean, they both liked James Brown, but my dad was more open to rap music. My mother was. For my mother, rap music was ghetto trash. We're good working class black people. How dare you listen to that? When it came out in 79, my dad was like, they're young people, who cares? So I had a racial immigrant model in my house. So how does that help me is when I meet students, I know the immigrant model, hard work, black people are lazy, blah, 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 blah. I know the racial model is racism, there's racism, help black people, there's racism. So I had both. So it helps me when I instruct students, whether here or Connecticut College. I know the first gen West Indian student. I know the arguments that their parents make. Hard work and no excuses, blah, 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 speak well. That's my mother, respectability. While my dad was racial, what are you gonna do? Join BSU, join BSU, read black books, black, read stuff, read the paper. My dad was an organic intellectual. He read New York Times and read the City Sun. So he read the white paper, read the black paper, read both. So my house, New York Times every day, City Sun, Amsterdam News. He listened to talk radio, WBAI, progressive talk radio. That's why I do a podcast called A Podcast for Your Punk Ass, sports talk, politics. That's all my dad. It was my father who got me into Morehouse. He said, David, you need to go to Morehouse. I never heard of it because in New York, they're going to push the city schools or the state schools. Obviously, the assumption is you can't afford it. They have black schools is trash, is garbage without them saying that. But my dad came in one day and said, Dave, you're going to Morehouse. More what? I never heard of it, because he's working class. So I didn't grow up around African Americans who went to college. See what I mean? So again, but there were some blacks in Long Island and the suburbs who went to HBCUs, went to college and knew black Greek life. I had no clue. So when he told me Morehouse, he said, why? Well, there's black male professors. I never had a black teacher, only had one in 12 years of school in New York. So again, those are the same systemic challenges we still have in 2020. I was in an honors class, never heard of Du Bois, never. And I was in honors class. I went to Morehouse, I never heard half those people. So I went through that phase of just angry. It doesn't make sense. How can you be an honors student and not know W.B. Du Bois? It doesn't make sense. However, my school had a pool. My kids went to segregated schools in the South, didn't know how to swim. So there's all these type of inequities that one sees as you get older. So that's my foundation. Working class, treat everybody the same, people of African descent, I don't care if you're from Jamaica, that's my dad, Barbados, all that doesn't matter. That's the Garvey model. So for me, when I came here, I don't care if you're Ghanaian, Nigerian, Tanzanian, Jamaican, I find a common ground. So for me, it's not this authentic blackness never existed because black is never monolithic, right? And I also understand perspective. So as I got older, I understood when Nigerians come here, they're in an environment where race doesn't exist. So how can I be mad when they understand racism? But when you're here long enough, you can learn some racism. But that's just to maturation and exposure. Last point on that, my parents were in the West Indies, so every Easter we go to Carnival. So I had a passport at 8, 9 years old. If most African Americans from the South, they drive south, they don't need a passport. That don't mean I'm a better person. It's because of my circumstance. If you want to go to Anguilla, you need a passport. I had a passport, so I've been on a plane as early as 8, 9 years old. You see what I'm saying? So again, it's all about exposure. So when kids come here, never left Gainesville, never left Florida, I can't be mad. If the folks are from here, they're research. Let's just one day go to Ghana. It doesn't work that way. First of all, it's expensive. Second of all, who do you know? For me, I was on a plane because I had family in the Caribbean. If you want to get there, you can't walk. So I had a passport. I was on a plane. And my dad, again, Puerto Rico, St. John, island hop, just a different perspective. And living in New York, Harlem. He's taking me to the Harlem bookstore. At 14, I saw Stokely Carmichael give a talk at Columbia University. I didn't want to go, but that's the stuff I was raised in. So what I tell students here, most of the stuff you read about, I met those scholars. I went to the workshops. So I'm at the ground on this Black Studies stuff. I saw John Henry Clark, Ben Yakinen, Van Sur, name all those names on my shelf. I've met all of them and came to talk at Ohio State. So I know what I'm talking about in terms of when we talk about Black Studies and its origins, all that stuff. Malefi Asante at Temple, I was at Temple 4 years after the program started. Karanga, met him numerous times. So what their students are reading, I've met these folks. I have a relationship with them. So that's my intellectual, social foundation. I go to Morehouse in 1986. I get introduced to Black Southern culture. So for me, soul food didn't exist in my house because my parents aren't from the South. You see what I mean? So I didn't know about grits and ham hocks and greens and sweet potato pie. No clue till I got to Morehouse. When I got to Morehouse, I understood class. There were rich Black people in Atlanta. I didn't have any idea. For me, every Black person is working class. We all had apartments. If you owned a home, you were Jamaican, you rented out 2 floors to make money. So you never had your own, I didn't understand that concept. This is all yours? No clue. Till I went to Atlanta, I went to a friend's cousin's house, they had a tennis court. That blew my mind. I just had no words to see young Black people in BMWs, rich, 3rd generation Morehouse rich. I'm 1st generation. So I had no idea about that till I arrived in Atlanta. Atlanta, as you know, have the massive class gaps amongst African Americans. You have very Black folks doing real well and folks that are doing horrible. You see, governed by middle class, neoliberal leaders who, obviously you're going to use market development strategies as a pragmatist, no doubt about it, but you see that. I didn't see that till I arrived in Atlanta in 1986 when it was on the come up with the highways and the airport and all the stuff. So I was at the ground floor when Atlanta became Atlanta, the mecca for Black people. You see what I mean? Then I went to Ohio State for my master's. Well, first I was a biology major. That was a disaster because 1st-gen students want to be a doctor. You help people, money, you can go to some clinic and give some shots for free, donate some time, give out some syringes, right? But there's something called math and science. When I tell students, if you don't have that discipline of studying right off the rip, it's not for most people. Now, some students go to post-bac when they mature, but the first year is discipline. You're going to have chemistry, biology, discipline. There's not much error to give up a weekend for homecoming, and you just can't in those, you just can't because you're trying to get to med school. When you're a history person or, humanities, social sciences, your first year is a gen eds, you're taking classes you like, you usually get a B+. If you do decent effort, you'll get a B+. Then you decide you want to go to grad school, then you up the ante the next 2 years and get A's because now you're putting in more work. So there's a difference. With the med school stuff, you get them C's first 2 years, you're done. You're not getting in. So it's about discipline. I didn't have it for that. My passion was in social studies and history. But all I knew was you can become a teacher. And I said, you know what? I grew up in the Bronx. I don't know. They don't make a lot of money. And it's just a lot of drama. I don't want to deal with all that. I'm just not into all that, because I'll be the disciplinarian guy, I'm the big black guy. No, I ain't dealing with that. It's too much work. Go to Morehouse, I meet black guys with PhDs, because for us, professors are nerds, they're corny, they're old. I met this young guy, Joseph Wyndham, rest in peace, died of cancer. He was 37, just got his PhD. I was like, yo, what is this? PhD, you wrote that? It was like 300 pages, that just blew my mind. He said, Dave, why don't you go to Ohio State? He went to Ohio State, 1-year program. He said, masters. I'm like, masters of the universe? What are you talking? I don't know what a master's was. I had no clue. None. Go to Columbus, 1-year program, and it was in Black Studies. Really it was about building confidence in your skills, right? If I'm a first gen, I'm not the best writer off the rip. I don't understand arguments and complexity and nuance, but it's Ohio State. We meet other students, African Americans, went to HBCUs, and we share these experiences. So there's no one there. It's not like competitive, you're dumb and all this other, like in history and all this. It's a community thing. We all there to help each other. You know what I mean? We're all there to support, hey, look at my paper. When you go in history, the assumption is you get one sentence wrong, you're dumb, you don't belong here. Not in Black Studies, because we all have similar messages. Many of us are first gen HBCUs, first to go to grad school. So we had the similar anxieties. Are we good enough? Can we do this? But it was in Black Studies at Ohio State, they clean up your game. So when you go to history and political science, you have confidence. All this is confidence. That's all it is. And I'll give you last point at. So I go to history my second year. I'm in this intro to historiography class. I'm the only black guy. And the year before, I took a literary class with a black Marxist scholar. And at that time, it was all about Afrocentric, black. I don't want to read anything about white people. And he's a black Marxist, like the black radical tradition, Cedric Robinson. You hear that a lot in the news lately, where you look at race and class. Now, I just left Atlanta. It was a massive class problem. Massive. There's blacks who are rich, but want to pull the race card, but knowing they're relatively doing way better than most white people. See, a lot of folks don't want, because if I say that, doesn't mean there's no racism. It admits we're in a racist capitalist state, right? Socialism not around the corner. Take advantage of opportunities you have and try to do the best you can. That doesn't mean there's no racism. That just means African Americans who took advantage of these systems and did what they had to do, right? So you can do two things at once. Anyway, we read this book by a Russian, Bakhtin, The Dialogic Imagination. I go to history class, the first day of class, anybody heard of Bakhtin? Put my hand up. And you could tell he was shocked, because black folks not supposed to know that white stuff. All the white kids were like this. Then he reluctantly picked on me. I dropped a few dimes on him, almost fell out of his chair. Almost like he was mad. Why don't y'all know that stuff? And this black guy, in his head about something else, but this black guy knows that. That's when the bell rung. I said, oh, I get it. You have to know everything. You just can't read one thing. You see what I mean? So once I read the white, black stuff and the white stuff, it's checkmate. I read your stuff and my stuff, checkmate. Now I got you checked up. I read Marx, I read Robinson, what? I read, your best white historian, I read John Franklin, what? And now I got you, like a rap battle. You see what I mean? Like a battle. And that's what I learned, just to that. The bell just rung. So then I thought, okay, now I get it. Read everything. Know all perspectives. That's what white people did, right? In Western Civ, we're just gonna read white stuff, the Greeks and Romans. Everything else doesn't matter. Literally, it's trash. And we're gonna argue Locke and Rousseau all day, while there's African philosophers I use in my class that came out before Descartes. You see? But they don't want you reading that. Or that's intuition. That's not philosophy, right? Or Asians, it's intuition. It's just a feeling. Get out of here. It's reason. It's science. So that's how, for me, over the years, as I get older in Black studies, I'm the one read everything and present that critique and no perspectives. So that's basically how I got here. I got the Temple in history, PhD in history, and then I got my first job at Georgia Southern, 17 years at Connecticut College, and now I'm here. So for me, what I try to do is replicate and, of course, expand. I mean, obviously, issues of sexual orientation, gender. I got married at 24. Wow, I'm sexist as hell. Damn. I'm still working on that, right? Sexual orientation, how do we engage Black queer studies, Why are we even tripping who someone's dating? That shouldn't even matter, so how do I engage those nuances? I watch polls, I'm really trying to figure it out, because at the bottom line, only way people of color is when we come, that's the only way we win. It's like this, there's no other way, historical. If there's 10 of us, if I leave 3 out because who you're dating, we don't have the power, because whites in America, it's numbers. But not only it's numbers, it's humanity. Those are people. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's human beings. So what I discovered over time, my wife's a filmmaker in Philadelphia. A lot of her filmmaker friends were lesbian, right? They watch my kids. I sit down, you know what? Man, like everybody else, bills, nobody wants pain. Everybody's trying to make it. All that nonsense went out my head, right? Oh, my girl's a kid. All that nonsense, because I didn't know, right? So that's why I try to, in my classes, and again, I know it's a process, so I'm not the one to, if you feel type of way, change you overnight, have you think about logically in a systematic way, why do I think this way about X? Does it make sense? Does it add up? I don't believe in what's called buffet style logic, like you like to pick and choose. You should be consistent in your thinking, right? I mean, and then if you're not, where does that inconsistency, how is that derived, right? So for example, as you know, if men have a lot of sex, not a problem. If women, where does that come from? Give me the science behind the reason. Who made that up and why? Is it religious, theoretical? Give me the data. So that's inconsistent thinking that guys can women. That doesn't make any sense. Now we can go back and forth, but I want you to prove, give it to me. Well, I don't know anything. Show it to me. And that's what I try doing in the class. All those genderness, all made up. Right? You can see he gets all mad because I'm just going at, I'm just saying, I want you for yourself to reflect on that and see how that may be problematic. Why? And this and that. So this is a lot of years of just reading, living. I have my own kids about your age and seeing millennials, how they operate. I watched the show Euphoria, HBO, trying to get into minds of young people. And what I've noticed, particularly to my son, my daughter's honor students, this and that. My son, he's still figuring it out. He'll get it. But he really helps me understand young people. He doesn't like lectures. He doesn't like nostalgia stuff. So I'm not going to lie to him. Back when I was in my house, I studied every day. Dad, you're lying. Yeah, you're right, son. You don't want honesty. In other words, that nostalgia, what millennials are not doing, they said about us in the 80s with hip hop. So I don't believe in generation gaps. That's that nostalgia. The argument that somehow there's some generation that's better. They just did it better. That's not measuring anything. More Blacks go to college now than ever. So what are you talking about? That's just that's not systemic analysis, right? So I think for me, young people, I'm open because I don't get into that preaching to them about what they're not doing. How can you listen to Cardi B and go to Black Lives Matter? Because I can, right? So I don't, how can you smoke weed and hey, what do you want me to do? I drank alcohol. So I'm trying to get to a point where value judging is less and more into, what is it about human beings? What is it about how do we do society? So all that impacts my teaching, my research, really trying to get into figuring stuff out. And my last point, like I was reading an article about Nathan Hare. Nathan Hare, Black sociologist, was the first chair of Black Studies at San Francisco State. He talked about at Howard, something about, I guess a lot of students are having sex. I'm talking about the women and stuff. I'm like, why does that matter to you? Who cares? That's what young people do. See, that type of thinking, right? Because the argument was in the 60s that Black women are loose and also the nonsense, right? What does it have to do with systemic racism, who you sleep with? That hasn't, because we got to behave a certain way. You can behave as well as you want. Cops still going to blast you. There's numerous examples of that. You can be respectable all you want. Respectability is not a precursor for equity. The Constitution does not say wear a suit, speak a certain way, do this, then you have a right to be a citizen. No, it's based on your humanity and not your cultural preferences. Pink gaiters, what type of drink you like, what type of movies you like. That is not part of the Constitution. That's all made up, respectability stuff. Where Black people are proving to white people, I'm a human being, the same white person is doing the stuff they say you're not doing. They doing just like they smoking, late to work, lazy, lying, because those are human attributes. So I try to, what I call white worshiping, cut that all up. So when I hear people say we need to unify like this group and that, first of all, you're worshiping. Nobody's all unified. That's a lie. It's just that on media, they chose not to highlight white poverty, white pathology. They don't highlight that on the news. White crime. Look what happened in Michigan. I don't hear white on white crime. What's wrong with their parents? Da, 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 da. They have a bad culture. You don't hear that. These are 13 idiots. When Black people, you get a whole litany, pathology, the sociologists come out, single parenting, and all the other stuff. You know they don't like education. All the white people, you never hear that. When we know poverty is the cause of these things, poverty impacts humans the same. I don't care what color you are. You don't have no money, no resources. You're just going to do what you have to do. But you see, it's intentional by the media. You're not going to hear white on white crime this the whole week. And if you say it, no one even says it. That's white on white crime. What about their parents? Where's their mother? What about church? They don't value education. Where are all those critiques? Not going to happen. That's a problem. So in my classes, I try to engage that to get students to understand the systemic, right? So it's not just about few bad apples. It's a system that's producing this. And on a scale of degrees, those 13 or 100, a lot of folks are like 99, 98 to 0. They're not going to act that extreme, but David Duke and them, oh sure, David Duke is just not going to do it, but he's on that spectrum. But he's smart enough not to do that, but he's not going to stop it either. He's not even going to condemn it. So that's part of that systems of degrees of white supremacy that we're trying to engage in the classroom.
Wow, I have so many questions now.
Go ahead.
If I look down, I'm sorry if I look down because I'm writing down like questions I want to ask. But earlier you were talking about what you learned, what your dad had you like read and everything versus what you learned in school. Can you like contrast that a little bit more, like expand on that?
Right. Well, obviously the K through 12 educational system is not to make you a critical thinker. It's to make you a cog in racial capitalism, individualism, free market, no health care for everybody, praise the holidays and stand up for anthems and prayer and all this other nonsense, not being a critical thinker. Why is our democracies full of contradictions? That should be an educated citizen, right? Not being this independent vote, that nonsense. You know what you're going to vote for. Stop playing around here. These are games, right? Unless we had 3 legitimate parties, then I can see, okay, but we don't. So nevertheless, Malcolm, all those books he recommended were not in the curriculum, which he recognized. You're not going to read Marcus Garvey in high school. You're not going to read Du Bois in high school because this is in the 80s. So we've come a long way relative. We have African history classes. In my day in the 80s, forget it. It was that textbook and that's it. So now again, he recommended the stuff. Frantz Fanon, I didn't read it, but at least put the names out there. Rest of the Earth. We go to the Harlem bookshop, pick up some books, but most of my information came from him or reading newspapers, but it just formed the foundation in terms of, knowing your history, right? History, doing the repeated. John Henry Clark, read these books. And I read them as I got older, but they were in the house, but they were nowhere near part of the K through 12 curriculum. And it's still not for most districts, but it's a long way from 1982 to 86. But definitely it was a 2-thing curriculum. But Robin Kelly, UCLA, a professor, says the same thing. Universities are part of the system, right? You have to educate yourself outside of the university through reading groups. You see what I mean? In other words, we would have all these problems. Universities were radical cutting edge. Think about it, right? We would have poverty, homeless. They'd be on the front line of that. So you have to, on your time, create your critical reading list through the reading and study group is where you can dictate what you want to read, Marxism, socialism. Don't wait for the instructors. There are some that might, some will not. You have to do that. And that's basically what I had to do, at home to some degree, but that's why I recommend students, study groups. Dr. Kent, we need to go protest. I get that. You know what's radical? A study group. I was like, what? Study group? What are you talking about? I want to do something. Now, as I get older, I get it, right? I get it. A study group, meeting once a week, take out a book and read and have a debate. That's power. Last point of that, Black Panthers. Do you know what their most radical program was? The breakfast program. Feeding kids breakfast. Why? You get them young. You socialize them, no different than America, right? The militia idiots, right? You get them young. America's this, and Black people, immigrants stealing stuff, and gay all robbing stuff. By the time they're 25, they want to hijack the governor. That's socialization. So the Black Panthers, love yourself. Black is beautiful. And the country says, you ugly. No, I'm beautiful. That's radical. Support your businesses. Take care of your health. That sickle cell. No, we want you eating chips all day and being unhealthy. You see, that's radical. the breakfast program, because you get them at 7, 8, and 9, right? But we so focus on the berets, those were just symbols, the berets, and get your attention. But what made it radical is giving the kids some Fruit Loops every day and chanting them, black is beautiful. And the society says black is ugly. That's radical. Now you're not bleaching your hand, buying old, trying to be white on nonsense and hating black history, and you just angry. You loving yourself, and the white supremacy, they hate when you love you. They hate that. They get some angry. They can't, oof. You talk about, I see it every day. That's why I love Candace Owens. They love black conservatives because they hate people like us. I mean, it's a straight hate. It's like, but that's what made the Panthers radical, is the breakfast, challenging Western supremacy, orthodoxy, the same thing how you socialize those militia guys. They were socialized, K through 12, church, community, saying this type of nonsense about immigrants and hating everybody. And that's what led them to do what they did. But no one's going to say that. These are 13 individuals. No, they're part of a system that's been unleashed since 2016 that hasn't been punished. No one's going to jail. It's not punitive. That's the problem. The educational system, until we change all of that, it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop, but they're not going to say it that way. It's in the school system, the churches. Could you imagine going to Western Michigan, those towns? Ugh, just narrow, provincial, full of anger. But I'll tell them corporations pay no taxes. They smiling. The stock market, they ain't got a 401k, but they happy, right? I love the stock market. You got 401k? Nope. Right? They hate everybody. Gays, they hate there's a lot of hate. I'm like, ugh, don't get me started, but that's the point. So a dual curriculum that we still need in 2020. So even if you take Black Studies courses, get another reading group, because we're not going to cover everything. If you want to read about Black queers, whatever, start a reading group. There's a lot of books, information. Don't stop constantly reading and critiquing. So I think sometimes the Blacks, you can get comfortable, right? Black professors, we got it all, but we don't know everything. There might be stuff I don't cover in the class. Get a reading group. Dr. Canton, what about so-and-so? Okay, and we can have a discussion. I'm open to that. Well, Dr. Canton, we talk about this, but in Black queer studies, okay, let's get it, or feminists. Well, Dr. Canton, I know these last few weeks we talked about this, but this is Black feminists out here and da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, let's have a discussion. That's the ideal of the academy.
So I guess my next question would be, so you were saying earlier, like, universities are part of the system, which is that why we don't have like ethnic studies, like Black studies, African American studies, Latinx studies, Asian American studies? Like, is that why?
Well, we have them, but oftentimes they were underfunded. You see what I'm saying? That they were born in struggle, react. The problem is anytime people of color is reactionary, right? Look at our history. No one wakes up, man, we're treating Black people wrong. I'm sorry. It doesn't happen without struggle. Frederick Douglass, right? Power concedes nothing without struggle. So when you're always in reactionary mode, you're based on the whim of the power structure. The economy, if there's a depression, your priorities go down, we're gonna have no money. It's reactionary. So in the 60s, we create Black studies, right? However, at that time, you have a lot of Blacks with PhDs. White people thought Black studies was some Black minister talking about Jesus. They didn't see it as intellectual. It was more to appease. Throw some Black people in the classroom, preach all their theories and conspiracy, all that garbage. They just didn't know. You see what I mean? So that was a problem. So the problem is that they have them, but they're not financially supported like, let's say, philosophy and history and European philosophy, Western philosophy, how it's roots, right? That Western civ, the Greeks and Romans, we have to know that. So it's a financial thing. Now, the other flip side is when Temple started a PhD program in 1989, Gates and Harvard says Ivy Leagues work. See, man, this can work. 90s, affirmative action, my generation going to grad school. And now with the Ivy Leagues, they take an idea, they have the resources to finance it, and now their programs become elite. Then white students start going, while people like Temple in North Philly, they get a lot of first-gen Black students, like myself, goes to that program, full of energy, full of vigor. Their skills need to be improved, unlike the Ivy kids who are a little more exposed to intellectual life. But now, African studies at Ivy League schools, it's legit, quote unquote, but the argument is that their interpretation, some would argue, tends to be, some say liberal, neoliberal, or practical, or whatever. So it's a tension. So we have them because we know hegemony, right? We're going to open it up. But if we don't finance them and fund them, then that becomes the challenge. So you notice a lot of it is just funding, right? That you need resources for research, teaching lines, right? We also find there's internal politics in terms of getting tenure, students' reactions. Students sometimes with Black scholars will be totally disrespectful. So it's one of those type of things. So, I think the George Floyd, 1968, we see 2020, it's the same type of thing we see. Reactionary, we'll do this. Then once we're on to the next thing, my thing is why do we always have to respond to Black death? Right? We don't do that to anybody else, right? When this country want that Wall Street check, they cut the check. They don't wait for 10 white people to die of poverty. Oh man, we should write. They cut the check. Why don't we treat Black studies the same way instead of reactionary? Black death, Latino death. Then we get stuff, right? When you look at American other stuff, they don't wait for death. It's proactive, right? They don't wait. They cut checks. They do the research, you see? But for African Americans, Latino, ethnic studies, it's reactionary. What do they want now? Cut the check. Then we'll give them about 3 years. We'll shift to something else. It's historical. So again, it's how to keep that historical memory alive, right? So right now, we're in that phase right now. We're still responding. Got the election, when the economy gets better, we'll shift to something else, or there might be another issue, China or Russia, who knows? But that's how, unfortunately, that's been the arc of this history, right? I like folks to be proactive, but again, they're proactive when there's power, voting, protest, pressure. You see what I mean? That's just how power works, right? Without power, without struggle, concedes nothing, because as you know, I don't know, I've been saying this for a long time. There's not been one president that woke up one day and said, you know what, we're going to do something. They don't do that because they're president of the United States. And they know this country is racist, sexist at its core. That's the majority constituency. Until there's a response, I just can't. Lincoln couldn't just end slavery with a snap like Thanos. He couldn't do it. He could just can't. Kennedy can't just wake up. He had to think of Cuba first. Why? More whites in this country, that's their concern. Not some Black people getting killed in the South. It's okay. COVID, disproportionately Black people, older people. They sick anyway. Let's be real. That's what it's about. Now if it's old white people dying the same rate, different outcome. There's a book by Derek Bell. He calls Derek Bell. It's what's that book called? It's called golly. When you get older, boy, I tell you, I can't rip the name. He was a black famous civil rights lawyer. He has a theory called interest convergence. So only time when white people in this country move is when we have similar interests. New Deal, Great Depression. You see Nazi Germany. You see what I'm saying? Interest convergence. Post-68, post-Floyd, interest convergence. But then we notice now Black Lives Matter support by whites is what? Decreasing in the last few weeks. Right? You see what I mean? So now, okay, we see the protests in Wisconsin, we see Seattle, Portland. Now we see less support of that. So the interest convergence, George Floyd was horrible, egregious. We still agree, it's egregious. That's easy. Egregious acts of white supremacy. But systemic, microaggressions, that's just too much for some people. You see what I mean? So Derek Bell talks about that interest convergence, and he's right historically. We have to change that in terms of what Black studies, in terms of this country, and hopefully people are seeing that now with these next elections. Hopefully, I'm looking for 2021. Let's see what that turnout is for that election. See if people have learned history and still put the same intensity in midterm elections, because that's the key. Not presidential, midterms, because Congress makes laws. You see, people don't know that. They get all fired up, and the next year I can't find them. I'm like, come on, man, let's go. It's the same voting place. Let's go. So we'll see.
True. So why aren't these programs funded? Like you say, it's white supremacy. Is it just that?
Right. I just think in terms, okay, listen, why are they not fully funded, right? It's like Juan Gilbert said, it's a capacity problem, right? Admissions at universities, the problem is too many good people, not enough spots. Let's be honest, right? There's 1,000 people, 2,000 who literally qualify. Somebody got to get to know. We have a budget. There's a budget in all universities, and it's a priority. The reality is, in this country, we still devalue Black, Latino, people of color now. In other words, right, it's just not, the average American, K through 12, look at your curriculum. We devalue this information. There's still this belief one is not intellectual or smart unless you know the white stuff. Look at Jeopardy, right? First of all, it's trivial knowledge. I don't mean you're smart. It's like me, I'm a trivial. I'm just into little facts and stuff. But we actually think those guys are geniuses. I can give them a black Jeopardy, they'll fail, right? So the knowledge, so the assumption is that most America, a white country, that you have to know your tradition, the Greeks, the Romans, Moby Dick, blah, 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 right? You might read Toni Morrison. It's just enough that comes in, Zora Neale Hurston. But at the core, 70% white country, just not interested. Public universities are funded by the majority white people, right? Resources spent to support these people like you do history, white philosophy, they will say what? These kids are not going to take it. It's straight pragmatism. Elite schools can do it because they have the resources, they have the endowments to take class loads of 6 people. They can afford it. Plus, when you're elite, white kids who take black studies in elite schools know that it's about skill sets. They have the resources to just major in anything because they're good. But when you're on public university, kids are practical. You need a job. That black stuff will not get you a job. That's the problem. You see what I'm saying? So it's a capacity, it's how we view this information is still just not viewed as valuable as the other stuff. That's just the reality, right? Like Hollywood, racial capitalism is a function of everything in this country. Once you understand, you get it, right? If we put all this money and they get in low enrollments, taxpayers are pissed because they've been socialized to devalue this stuff. No one's a bad guy. It's how it happens. Look at your K through 12 curriculum. Look at TV. Just look. Look at the books that are referenced. Look at, when I watch MSNBC, look at people's bookshelves. All the white people have just white books. Look at them. Meacham, all of them. They might have Cass, the book by Wilkerson, the one black person book, but they have all white books. What does that tell you? And that's the intellectual elite class. These are good people. Look at their bookshelves. Now, one book by one black author. That's a problem. I have majority black books, but I have some white books in there. They have 0. And they get up in there. Now, look at the black folks. You'll see Eddie Glaude's thing. Look at his bookshelf. Baldwin. You'll see more black books. That's the problem. And we've read more white books than they've read black books. It's that simple. Now, we can talk around it, but that's the reality, right? We are a public institution funded by X. No one's going to say this, but that's the reality, right? Most majors of African studies are African American students because we still think there's only knowledge for black people. From a white person from the Panhandle, learning about Du Bois will not help my life, even though they talk about racial capitalism. Capitalism, exploitation, you're being exploited, global markets, that's not for me. I'm going to take econ and be part of global capitalism and just be a pawn for Amazon, right? Rather than seeing that Du Bois spoke to you. You see what I'm saying? A lot of work to do, man. It's just a lot of work. I mean, obviously we'll say millennials, and until I see the data, I don't get all like amped up till the data, but there's always this belief that millennials are more progressive. There's 2 things. You can be progressive, still vote Republican, right? You can watch polls, still vote Republican. You can, smoke weed with a black person, vote Republican. So I'm still not convinced yet, because we're defined in terms of feelings. I got gay friends, I smoke, I got some black friends, Republican, right? You see what I mean? I'm 18, I'm on Instagram, I'm cool, Republican. So until I see that data, I don't get too crazy about the natural assumption of progress based on age. And as a lot of people get older, you get conservative. Once you get out of college, you get a job, you see them bills, you slowly start shifting. Man, look at my tax bill. You know what I mean? So I don't get all nuts. Do I see a relative with you guys in terms of, yes, you're a little more open to gay, lesbian, to trans, a little, but when you get older, right, it just changes. So I don't do that simplistic, well, we'll just wait till y'all become our age. We said that was my generation. We're still waiting. I was born 68, 52 years later, we're still waiting, right? Yes, there's more interracial marriage, but that's not a system. That's 2 individuals. I want a policy, education equity, Pell Grants, reparations. I don't care who you marry. So we're still seeing it in a simplistic, not a systemic, right? So we'll see some white Republicans drinking coffee or white millennials and assume at UF, who are they voting for? That's what I care about, because that's policy. who you drink with, who you sleep with, I really don't care. What you smoke, what's the policy? So I'm just not that convinced. Look at Trump's election, right? Working class white women, who's to think that their daughter's gonna be any different, right? You know, just because you're young, mom, no, you're not. Republican, maybe, I don't know. We hope, or I vote Republican. Yo, mom, you know, gay people aren't so bad. Look at my friend. So you see what I mean? So we have to look at how we're going to measure millennials or more, or what does that mean in terms of policy and not personal feelings? You see what I mean? That's my question. I don't care about who you seeing. What is it in that voting booth? That's what I'm mad about. Voting booth and your actions.
So my next question is going to be, so when I was preparing for this interview, I read up that you're here to make the first African American Studies department in the Southeast, but why is there such a divide from like, why has there never been one in the Southeast? And you said there's other programs, and are they more in the other like parts of the country?
Right. So there's departments. Georgia State has a department, I think. Yeah, they have an African Studies department at Georgia State. That's Atlanta. You know, now the state of Florida, I haven't did all my research on it yet. So I just think, again, I mean, here it's just about having the faculty, the capacity, and the commitment. So again, when you do initiative university, it's a three-pronged attack: the students, faculty, and administration, right? Those are the purse strings. You also need people to talk to board of trustees who are responding to donors who, you know, let's be honest, because we love in this country, because you have money, you're smart. No, you're smart at that one thing that gave you money, but you know what the hell's going on talk about academics. But since you have money, that gives you access, but you know what you're talking about, and you're not humble enough to say, you know what, let me learn. Black studies, I'm not into that. You don't know what it's about, because in their mind, Black studies is hate, it's un-American, it's all this other nonsense, just get along, just not informed. So it's a conversation, but usually it's responding to protests. So again, it's not just, the president's not gonna wake up, you know what, here's X, here's Y, because with public university, you can't do that. So I think now we're at the time where we're gonna have 4 hires for next year. You know, there's a commitment from the administration, but again, I'm always thinking short and long term, right? What if 5 years from now, everything is back to normal, or the COVID economy is real? Are we gonna have the resources to expand or get more faculty in 3 to 5 years? Because the economy is just a mess. So those are the calculations one has to make, because you just can't assume out of goodness of the administration, Dave, you're right, here you go. It doesn't work that way, because we're a public university. There's people in Tallahassee, right, who are like, you know, I liked it, but there's other priorities. In fact, you have more than whatever. You see what I mean? So those are the conversations that require people to continue to push and not wait for Black death, right? You don't want to say, okay, the next Black person that dies, then I don't like living like that. It doesn't make sense. Let's be proactive. Look at the country. The demographics of this country is changing. As you know, more Black and brown kids being born every day. They're majority in public schools. So we have to have a curriculum that's engaging, that's complicated, that's nuanced, and Black studies provide that for faculty, for students, for staff. I want this to be the space where there's a whole term called HBCU-ish. When you come in here, it's like you're at Morehouse. You're like at Howard. You know, you just, you know, does that mean if I give A's? No. Doesn't mean we don't disagree. No, we're human beings, but it's that sense of, oh, I can exhale. You know, here's a space where, whew, I take the mask off. I can relax. I can talk about my vacation. I can talk about food I eat. No one's like explaining stuff. You could just be a human being for 5 minutes of the day instead of this tense pressure of a pressure cooker. The only Black person in STEM class, only Black person in science, all day. That's a lot of pressure, right? If I make a mistake, they're gonna think I'm this. Stereotype threat, a lot of pressure. In here, relax. You know what I mean? Take all that mask down. Okay, don't need the big words, relax. You know, I don't care if you use African American vernacular. Go ahead, relax. I'm not judging you, relax. I don't care if you have an uncle in the system, whatever. I don't care, you know, or who you're dating, whatever. Let's have a conversation. Wow, that makes such a difference, I think, so you know, you can come to a place where you can be you. Man, in my class, I'm just scared to say I have a cousin doing this, or I'm scared to say I'm 3rd generation UF and these folks might feel some type of way and jealous. In here, you can say it and be relaxed. Well, let me come down a few classes because I don't want the white people thinking whatever. I like them to let them think I'm on Pell Grant, right? Or the Pell Grant kid, I'm so scared talking about Northeast Miami and the struggles we may have, I'm not gonna share that in class. Because I don't want them thinking that. That's a lot of stress. Well, for white students, they just live. Unless you're like poor white, maybe you might try to mask a little bit, but they just come in and just be talking, whatever, freedom. My doctor, my uncle, we've been to Kenya, we did this and that, and they free. So I want this space to give that freedom. IBC, we could relax. When I was at Ohio State, I spent every day at the Black Cultural Center. And I was a grad student, and I didn't understand the challenges students, because I went to Morehouse. I didn't understand, oh, I get it. So for me, the Black Cultural Center was that space where you can relax for 10 minutes, 20 minutes out the day. As you know, there's a lot of pressure out there, and it has an impact on the outcomes. I want this space, I don't know how small it is, whatever, to be this space. All that comes off. I'm not saying we're gonna agree on everything, but you can relax. You can talk about whatever, you can share a family story. I don't care, I'm not judging. Whether you're rich, broke, in the middle, from Jamaica, Ghana, Nigeria, I don't care. I want this to be that, whoosh, you know what I mean? So that's ultimately one of my goals here, becoming a department. We have the space here, we got the IBC. I want this to be the space where you can do it, because I see you shaking because you know what I'm talking about. It's tough in them classrooms, and it's not the egregious racism, it's the little stuff, which your little like spidey sense go off, like, oh, why'd they say that? You know what I mean? Thinking, what? And you go through that for what, 2-3 hours a day, a week, that's tough. Even sometimes your professor makes mistakes sometimes. You're like, oh my God, where do you go? You can just, and it doesn't get back to the professor. I don't come in, you need grit. You need to upstand racism and just fight it through like I did and don't say anything. Come on, that's not helping. You know what I mean, right? That's what it is. You kids complain, I don't want to hear it. Back in well, it's not right. How about that? Right? You know what I mean? How about we change that? Because it's power, it's too powerful. But how about I give you strategies on how to engage that? That's what y'all want to hear, strategy, and not a preaching downgrade, you making stuff up, all you millennials are soft and all that nonsense. That y'all don't want to hear that. And that's what keeps these programs, because you have faculty that believe that, and everyone don't think the same. But I think also, I don't believe in that, but if there's different faculty who appeals to what you need, that's what I want. Because there will be some people who think, and I get that, I'm more kind of, because I watch my own kids, they're all different. I know what my son needs, I know what my daughter likes, my youngest daughter likes, same with students. You might some people like to get tough talk. Some people like the compassionate, contextualized talk. Just depends. So I want a department where I don't care whatever, you come in here and we have these conversations with my peers.
Why do you think that it's taken 50 years for UF to even start this process? Because I think they've started it before, but they've never gotten anywhere. But
right. Well, it's probably the same thing, right? Started it, put the committees, then something else becomes a priority. Whether the president, the provost, so again, it's like the president, provost, dean. There's all these levels of have to be on the same page. Then how do you hire African American faculty? Once the word gets out in my profession, it's a small group. See, again, on the one hand, being a Black scholar, because of racism, our numbers are small. So we know, most folks. When I say I know someone, I know them. It's not like a white scholar where we met at a conference. No, I know this person. So when I say, so it's a small group. So when the word starts getting out about an institution, about how Black faculty is struggling, it gets out in the conference circle. It gets out in profession circles. It gets out on text. I don't know about this place. So I think there's a history here that's circulating amongst Black scholars that this right now is not ideal location. I've heard what's happened to some people that interviewed here. I've heard about Kendi, even though it's another complicated story, but I can talk to people like Dr. Harrison, who was here. She can tell you a story. So those stuff exists in the air. You see what I mean? So it's hard to recruit. So again, they probably talked about it. There was no pressure from students. Faculty is stressed out trying to get tenure. So it's all these institutional things. But again, students, faculty, and administration have to be on the same page to make these things happen. And of course, right now, again, unfortunately, Black death, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, right, which made now commitment now, right? I wish the world didn't work that way, but that seems to be the history, right? Reactionary, Black Death to get X, the 60s, same thing. When is going to be the day when we know what's right is right? When people in power wake up, this doesn't make sense, we're going to do this. And I don't care what the majority says, because they are wrong. But see, democracy doesn't work. It's not based on justice. It's based on power. It's not based on justice. You know what stuff is wrong. The water in Flint is dirty. Just cut the check. There's no debate. I'm going to lose my job. No, it shouldn't be a debate. Broadband. Why are we debating? Get it done. I don't care if people don't support it, rises taxes, get it done. School equity. What are we debating? Well, if I support more money, I lose my job. That's not justice. Defunding the police. We're not saying get rid of police. I don't want police. I don't want getting robbed. But we're saying they get too much money in budgets that are tight. But if most people support that and I'm looking to keep my job, but we know what's right. Some of that money should go to preventative programs. So it's about power and not justice. That's what SNCC learned in 1964 in Atlantic City. When they went there and realized the Democrats of Mississippi would not seat them, they realized it's not a morality thing. Now, William Barber of the NAACP in North Carolina, he runs Moral Monday, he makes that argument. He uses morality, right? That regardless you're Republican and Democrat, don't you want clean water? That's a moral issue. Equal education, moral issue. Right? These are moral issues. Unfortunately, our system's based on power. So I get it, brother. I fully understand. I went to his talks and all that. I get the wordplay of it. I get it. He's right. But this thing is based on power. Representatives respond to power. If there's 10 people, 6 are against clean water, I'm going with the 6 because I want to eat. It's that simple. We know you should have clean water, but until it's a majority view, morality or not, I don't care. And that's how politicians work. It's power, not justice. You see, so if universities reflect our system in our country, we are at least more progressive than corporations, but they too have power on the private level, donors, on the public level, state public taxes. So if the majority of Floridians say X, you just can't come in here and it doesn't work that way. Well, what's just is Black Studies having a graduate program. If I did a poll, not supported by 7 people, sorry. Now, Black Death, can't be that cruel. We'll support 5 people. But once everything gets back to normal, we'll see what happens. I mean, that's just history. I think people, Dr. Kaki say those things. It's history. I'm not making this up. This is a history. And I'm just trying to get it, as my friend Joe Madison's grandfather said, put it where the goats can get it, right? These are systems that are rooted in power and not justice, which means that people have to protest. America was founded on protest, and that's what people have to do to get what they need. That's American history. And that's why we see the militia, right? Because they see the writing on the wall. The numerical minority, their position, white guys are going to be a minority. We also know that white males' mortality rates are going this way. Working class white guys are suffering opioids, no jobs, their suicide rates are high. That number's going this way. If you're working class white dude, no degree, you're dying at 50. While Black and brown people are younger, going this way. You see the writing on the wall. It's straight numbers. It's demography. But rather than seeing a bond unity of clean water, broadband, healthcare, it's a zero-sum game for them. That we're taking, I took something, talking about, right? We're taking something. Undocumented are taking something they didn't have in the first place, right? Because corporate capitalism has been taken from them for years. But where do you learn that? Not in K through 12, not in their circles. In their circles, the free market is the best thing since sliced bread. And they broke. But I don't get as mad as I used to because I understand K through 12. You went to school K through 12. You didn't have these conversations about class. No, you did. You just had conversations about everyone's middle class. What does that mean? Your friend got a Beamer. I'm on the train. How the hell are we all middle class? It doesn't make sense. But that's, to my point, it's intentional. We don't want to train critical thinkers because critical thinkers make better societies, which means what? Taxing the wealthy, clean water, Flint. Doesn't mean we're not going to have billionaires. We're not going to have as many billionaires. But I bet you the society would be a whole lot better if we went from 680 billionaires to 300. Be a whole lot better society for the masses of people who are out here struggling. And it's not that they're lazy, they're working, they don't make enough money. So like, think about it. You never hear politicians say working class. Why not? Working poor. Always middle class. That's disingenuous. There are people who are working who are poor. And in your mind, that's an oxymoron. How can you work and be poor? Because we say poor people ain't working. No, fool, they don't make enough money. They are working. And the contract said in America with labor, if you work 40 hours a week, that's the minimum to have a decent life. Am I saying we should pay, healthcare workers $7,000? I didn't say that. All I'm saying is I agree to work 40, rent, food, healthcare, decent education, one vacation a year. That was a contract. That's all. But what we're saying is that because you flip a burger, you do this, you're not entitled to that. Who are you? Right? That's a human being. That's why he's stressed out. No vacation, no money, mad and angry. But his middle class people tell them, oh, they made it where their dad gave them an inheritance fund. Just lying. Got a trust fund, just lying. I do this all myself, not admitting you got a trust fund. That's what gets me angry, the whole dishonesty in conversation. That's like me not admitting my kids don't have a relative privilege to other kids. That's not true. I got to admit that. But they still have to work. I'm just going to walk into college. Oh, I know dad, my dad. Okay, you're in. No, but I can admit that. You see what I mean? So, but for a lot of whites, they don't want to admit their privilege. I'm not going to look down on you. I'm understand how systems work, So those are the conversations, like I said, in Black studies, which we have. I don't care if you're Black, white, whatever. These are the systemic conversations we're leaning towards. Capitalism, racism, sexism. We want to get our students really think about these systems and not go into individuals. And I'm really big into history and sociology, that analysis, where everything is explained through history and through sociology, everything. Why the NBA is 80% Black, I can explain that. It's not genetics. Why is white swimming 80-90% white? It's not genetics. If you're not exposed to a pool, you can't swim. I can explain why the owners of football are 9% white. It's history, wealth inequality. It's not genetics. Everything, I'm just so against genetic anything. Everything for me is history, sociology. I don't believe in no magic genes and anything. I don't care. I don't care if you're the best violinist in the world. Somehow people get stuff. They really like stuff. They're just really good at it. And they practice for hours. Those that are real good just get it quicker, and they either support it or someone in their family gets LeBron's son. One son is good in ball, the other one's not that good. Same genes, maybe just not that interested. You see, but we like genetics because we're obsessed with biology in this country, in Western Civ. We're obsessed with it. Gender, this, what team you on, who cares? While justice is about humanity. We don't care about your gender. But that's how we're obsessed with biology in this country. Men, women, right? Black, we're obsessed with it. Women with muscles. Why you have muscles? Because I want them. Obsessed. Men who are emotional. We're obsessed. Why are you crying all the time? Because men are not supposed to. That's nonsense. So for me, history, sociology, right? Science over nurture stuff to explain anything. So when I teach my sports classes, always the white kid will say, I think LeBron James has genetics, every time, genetics. Yes, he was born 6'9", but doesn't he put in work? So there's still a belief that, well, he doesn't work as hard. He works out every day, you see? Then what happens with Asian Americans, and the assumption is Asians are good in math. No, it is a history. Most that come here have degrees. That's sociology. That's why the 5% population, 6% are college graduates, because they know through the STEM is how you're going to make a good lifestyle, through the Ivy League SAT numbers crunch. But now they're getting rid of SAT because why? The white kids who went to Harvard, their scores are lower. You see, so now let's get rid of it. And we also know most white kids go to boarding schools who will still get into the elite schools. But what happens? We get conservatives to blame Black and Latino kids. We're taking all the spots. We get like one on the SAT. They be lying to their teeth. But most people believe that. You know why you're there? These Black kids getting in there with 400 SAT and a C average. Like Mindy, Mindy the actor? She was her brother. He checked the black, he gets me so angry. He gets on Fox News, look him up. He got into med school. He said he checked the black box. That's his hustle. Go on YouTube, look up, he be on Fox News like 5 times a year saying that. Mindy's brother, he's a doctor. He checked the black box. He got into medical school or something to make a point. He gets on my nerves. That's a racket. And he's on Fox News about at least once or twice a year saying that's his spiel. That's how he makes money or whatever his attention. Look him up. You'll see. You'll burn your blood. But that he's a problem. You know what I mean? So that's what's going on that end in terms of the question you just asked. So let's keep going. I love these questions.
If you don't mind me asking, like, you don't have to answer this, but like, what reputation does UF have to like Black faculty in like the circle you were talking about?
Well, I just think, again, now no, it's like most places, right? Now, again, we say relative to our peers, our locational peers, SEC schools, right? Because we have a different academic, it's probably the same thing, right? That we'll all say we need more Black faculty. Once we get here, you get the Oscars treatment, the red carpet. But then when you get here, it can be challenging, for some isolated. For others, you may have colleagues, who may not have voted for you and they might only here because you're African American. And then you can feel those in meetings. You can kind of sense, if there's 10, you're trying to get 10 your majority vote. There might be 6 on the block, and you have to, whatever you have to do to make sure you don't make them angry in a meeting, lead a protest with students, all this. That's the extra weight and pressure. So I just think what happens, UF, I think there was some survey, didn't get high marks and stuff. And I also think for African Americans, it's a college town. So I think it's layered, right? Gainesville is not Tallahassee. If you're 34 and single and you're a Black middle-class bougie person, it's not Atlanta. I don't know if you've been to Atlanta, you've been to Tallahassee, there's a bigger Black middle class. See, people don't like to talk about, but let's be honest, right? There's locations, and it's regardless of race, there are locations that people, particular classes, go to socialize. Why? Books, movies, preferences. Let's be honest. So Gainesville, like most college towns, are designed for college students. So you have a small Black faculty, a smaller Black middle class, right? There's no happy hour spot, or there's only one, and you see the same people all the time. When you're in Atlanta, there's multiple happy hour spots for middle class Black people. That's why it's the Mecca. You go to Nashville, you can go to Charlotte. So you're dealing with that reality. So for me, I'm empty nester, my kids are grown, and I'm in a different place in my life. So when you recruit younger faculty, it's tough. If you're 34, 35 and single, it's tough for them to stay 10 years because they want to go to Atlanta, right? They want to be in the city because there's more social stuff. So this is a college town, heavily, mostly working class, low income African Americans. Even though we're all African American, just to be honest, right? In terms of socialization, you can do different stuff. Don't mean anybody's better than anybody, but that's the reality. So those are things you're working with. So I find UF, they like to get people that went here. The argument is that we're going to get people who went here to understand those sociological realities. My thing is, we're number 6 university. I know good and damn well I can find some people, I never went here, who want to do what I do. They're at a place in life where, look, Atlanta's 5 hours, Miami's 5 hours, it's called planes. And you're so busy anyway, you're not going anywhere during the semester anyway. Let's be honest, you're busy. Who I can get 5 people that can do what they do here. The salaries here, you got resources. It just takes time and knowing the right people. And for African Americans, there's a network. There's the job ad, and then there's what? The unofficial job ad. Dave, talking about University of Florida, where you can have an honest conversation, right? Dave, tell me about so-and-so. This is what the job ad says, this is what the videos say, and there's what the grapevine says. And we know that African American history is a very strong grapevine of Black middle, is very tight and strong. You see what I mean? And I'm confident we can get those folks, but it just takes a conversation to understand the past, understand that. And I know we're going to do it. It just takes the right person who knows. And I've been in this game about 20 years, so I'm right in the middle where I'm not too old. I got some younger people where I know people have been around a long time, so they be honest with me. Because when you hear Gainesville, it's a college town. So I'm coming from Charlotte, Atlanta, a urban space, i.e. middle-class spaces. That's a tough sell, right? So I just be honest about it, right? So I know coming here, I knew that. But I know for me in a semester, I'll go to Morehouse Homecoming in October. I'll go to a classic. I know about 5 things I might do in a semester to get that little fix, So I would just tell people that. But if you want to get resources done, you want to build a department, let's get it happen. But if you need that Atlanta thing, you're not going to make it. If that's something that this is not for you. If you need that every week happy hour, there's some people that need that. It's not ideal. For me, maybe 20 years ago, now when I go home, I need to relax. I'm done. So I think that's it. So I think I'm confident that, I mean, they found me. Folks are out there. It just takes a lot of time, which we're going to put in the search. It takes a lot of conversation once the searches go out and people start talking. And I have enough, I think, name recognition where I will get, I'm assuming I'm going to get side emails and text and those days. We'll talk about game. Be honest. So you can have that be honest talk. And I would say the same way. I'm not going to say, oh, you know, then you get here, then you're mad and you're leaving. I have to be honest. Because if you want to build a department, you can't have turnover. You can't have people leaving in 2 years. You just got to be consistent. So that's the thing. But I'm confident, you know, we're going to get some scholars, solid scholars, community engaged scholars. You know, just takes a conversation, and I think honest conversation. So what I try to do is get up the information of why people left. I try to contextualize. So for instance, like Kendi, you know, he's a policy guy. DC. I mean, you know, you can't. It's not like he went to Iowa. Then I'd be insulted, right? Man, he left here. He went to Western Michigan. What? Right? He went to DC. That's, if you're a policy wonk, you have to be. That's what they do. You've been to DC. All the restaurants is ongoing politics. Not Gainesville. That's just the reality. You know, as at Boston College, I get it. You know, other people, I get their story. It could be a partner thing. If you have two partners, right? If you don't get the other one a job, I can't. If we have two jobs, why would leave one? It doesn't make sense. You know that. Why would take a pay cut on the hope? There's no hope. I'm not in the hope business. When you get two checks to one check, who can afford that economic loss? So what can you do about it? Well, we might get them a job. Just no. If I have two tenure track jobs, there's no way I'm giving one up on hope. If African Americans don't come from a lot of wealth, you just can't. So it's all these other factors, school systems. When you bring kids in, what's public schools like? Well, we have like one black kid honors program. Oh, I know what that means, right? Some parents don't want to deal with that. I dealt with that in Connecticut. You got to fight to get into the honors program. You got to fight to get recognition. I don't want to deal with that. I'm in Charlotte. I'm in Nashville. I'm not dealing with that. So they want to know about educational stuff. So I have to be honest about that, right? Most black, and it's national, black kids have to work, or you not honor ready. Even as professors' kids, you got to stay on top of them. So I'd be honest. You got to stay on top of them. So see what I mean? That's the honest. See, that's not in the Chronicle. But as a historian, we know that's national, right? We know that. So I give you the information, let you figure it out, and I go from there. You know, well, we worry about your kids' education. I like it's more nurturing. Now again, you got to fight to do it. If you have the energy, like which we did, my wife and I, to fight in the schools and go to the meetings, that's cool. But if that's not what you want to do, then it's going to be tough for your kid to excel, because Gainesville has a reputation with black students. So those are conversations. But again, I just be honest about it, because if you're not here and not happy, then it's going to hurt the program. You're not going to come to the meetings. You're not going to be engaged. I can't find you. You're going to come 2 days a week. You're going to be missing all the time because you're angry, Dave. You lied to me. I'm going to get the hell out of here in 3 years. And while I'm here, I'm doing the bare minimum. And to build an apartment, I need maximum. Because if you're going to be, I'm going to be at events. I'm going to be at IBC. I'm going to be out in front of Turlington, because I'm trying to build majors. And I need people who can put that type of time in. And if you're mad, you're not going to do it, right? You're going to be counting down. You're going to be in that job market, and you're going to be out of there in 2 years, because I told, these schools are excellent. And the first day you get there, they put your kids in remedial class. They didn't even ask you. They think she can't do AP. They didn't even ask. You know, you came from AP, they'll look at you and still put you in, right? Or make up some excuse. Well, here we have somebody be lying, right? You know, or if I told you, well, Gainesville is this great urban gentrification's going on. Yeah, for school kids, that's what's going. The gentrification is for college kids, not you. But if I'm not honest about it, you can say that. Well, this gentrification, you're thinking urban, young professionals. No, it's the college kids with money. You see, so I'm lying. I'm not telling you the full story, right? Because Dave, you said it was gentrification. Yeah, for young kids, not you. Now you mad, right? Because gentrification is linked to urban young adults. Here, it's the college students. So if I say, I know you interpret gentrification as young adults who got degrees. Nah, these are 19-year-olds getting nice stainless steel apartments at 20, and you're a professor. You know that's a problem. They loud in the club. You trying to get some sleep. You're going to leave. You're going to be mad at me because I didn't tell you the full story, you know. Or, Dave, I say, well, black faculty are happy. Everything is great. Are you sure? Oh, not a problem. Please. Get up in here, that first meeting. Then you mad at me again. So honesty is the best policy. I know for me coming here, the opportunity to build and leave a legacy. I did some background search. So I knew I was getting into as a college town. I was at Statesboro. I was at Ohio State. I know what the college town life is like. My daughter's at Illinois. She tells me her challenges, not a problem, because I'm empty nested. So schools, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And the resources I never had in my career, this is great. But now it's about building a cohesive team who's, who has that mentality when they get here is key. So I got to focus less on, you might went to Harvard and Yale and this and that and all that, but I really got to tap into, are you built for this, as they say out in hip hop? Are you built for this? Gainesville, the state of Florida, right? Students come from a wide range of skill sets. There's the urban areas, Jacksonville, Orlando. To see a concert, you got to drive 2 hours. Are you built for this, right? They don't come to Gainesville. Can you handle that? Where you come from a town where there's concerts coming through all the time. If you want to see an African-American concert, I got to drive. Everyone's not up for that. Not that you go every week in the first place, but psychologically, right? You see what I mean? So I tell people that. Well, Dave, well, I'll be honest with you. We don't get a lot of R&B concerts. You have to go to Jacksonville, Orlando, which is X miles away. Now, the funny thing is you don't go to concerts every week. It's just the thought that you can get there in 10 minutes. See, it's all psychology, right? But you're not going. But the thought when I want to go, but you're not going. But in your mind, the thought, if I want to go, I got to drive an hour, 45 minutes to Orlando and spend the night.
Yeah.
Even though you're not going. See, it's all psychology. See, I've been in so long, right? I lived in New York, never been to Statue of Liberty because it's not going anywhere, right? So, but just the thought of driving to see a concert, even though you don't go to concert, but Atlanta, it's 20 minutes and they're every week. Here, it might be once a semester, but the thought of driving, it messes with your mind. Man, I don't know. That's long. So for me, what I've just figured, when those things come, we go spend the night, my wife and I make it happen. But I'm 52 with no kids. You're 34 with 5-year-olds. I was in that life. It's different. I get it. You see what I'm saying, right? So these are things. That's why I think for me, recruiting faculty, I'm aware of the life, I call life cycles and all these things. And I don't judge. I get it. Your kids are number one. I get it. You want a break? I get it. So I'll just be honest, if this is not this, I'll be honest, this might not be ideal because I need people who are going to be here for the long haul, not just come in, write 2 books and be out of here. Only way they stay if I'm honest and not make stuff up. So I use all these scenarios like, well, listen, I know you're here, but you don't go to concert. Just the thought because it's 10 minutes, but you don't go. What's the difference? You might go now because it's 2 hours and you only get it once in a while. This might be better because oftentimes we say no to stuff because it's so much, but human nature, now that it's so few, now you might go now. And plus with COVID, it changed my view on let's get together. Next week. Now you might be more proactive with social relations, right? Where in the past, it'll be next week. What this pandemic showed is people are social beings, and now we're not going to devalue meetings and relationships. I'll just do it next week. Now it's like, I can't wait to do it. So I think I might be able to serve that into another recruiting, right? Now I'll drive to Orlando because in 2 years, I haven't gone anywhere. So I'm ready now. You see what I mean? I can't wait to go to a concert, to go to X. You see what I'm saying? So that's going to be all part of my way of influencing or getting people to look beyond just a college town, which i.e. means white. The college towns, the bar stream, that's why they're college towns,
I was gonna ask, how do you like UF? How has your experience been at UF so far?
Well, the problem is COVID. It's really like I'm here but not here. So pretty much. So knowing that, I can't for instance, I walk on campus. I don't see so far right now. I have too many students of color, right? Because it's COVID. But in terms of me, so right now I can do in terms of my relationship with the deans are great. Colleagues, I'm involved in stuff. There's been no microaggression or bad emails or slights and that. So that's cool. My administrative assistant is great. My colleagues are great. So all of that. So from that standpoint, resources are great, not a problem. But until we get back to live action, I teach next semester, which is good. And I'm doing the high flex. So right now, everything is great because I was in a COVID situation. So, but I cannot admit that I've got all type of support. I've had no problems so far. Am I looking for problems? No, that's naive. I'm not being naive. It's working for me right now. So I can't complain. A year from now, we'll see. But again, I don't look at it rose-colored glasses like any institution. See, I'm a historian. UF, UA, Harvard, Princeton, these institutions are developed in a country of America, race, class, and gender. So what makes anyone any unique is just not realistic. It's all relative. But for right now, I'm good. We'll hire a new faculty next year. That's great. But so far, I can't complain one bit because, and a lot of it's because of COVID. There's nobody around. I mean, you come to Turlington, I see a squirrel on my window every day before I see people. That's my little friend. I haven't met half the people in person yet. It's all been through Zoom. I haven't met too many majors yet. Students, I might have came and counted maybe 12. So it's almost like I get a restart next fall if whenever we get out of this thing. But it's giving me time to get what I need done, lay my foundation, and next year ready to hit this thing running.
Cool. Okay, so there's something you've talked about a lot during the interview is community.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the importance of community or what it means to you and building that?
Right. So we know when we talk about people, African American studies, the argument was making the university accountable to the community. Why? Universities are funded by tax dollars. Whether you make in sales tax, whether you make $2 an hour, you pay sales tax, right? So universities at one time, like you look at the 60s, were designed to support the military industrial complex, right? Research was being paid for you to create bombs and stuff that didn't help poverty. So Black Studies makes universities accountable to the people that pay these taxes. That was the idea. History wasn't thinking like that because it was viewed as something for the elites. History, philosophy, their money comes from tax dollars from working people. But in their mind, right, you don't owe them anything. Black Studies, wait a minute, you're in Black neighborhoods, right? There's a brain drain, whether it's our athletes, right? You get all this money and you're not addressing these issues that you caused in the first place through what? Expansion of buildings, neglecting Black students' admissions for all those years and collecting all this money where the IRS didn't say one thing about losing your nonprofit status. So now it's time to pay up. So I think for university community, it's two things, right? That my job is to take information we get in the academy and take the community, share the information. I don't have all the answers, but we come to a synthesis. Who knows what local people need but local people? Shout out to Ella Baker. But at the same time, there's information coming up here that you don't know, right? That we can work together. So oftentimes when we find a lot of community stuff, there's a lot of what my friend called bad history. You come in, yeah, Dr. Canton, you saw this video by so-and-so. He's not a historian, right? Yeah, Dr. Canton, heard about the conspiracy theory about syphilis? No, they had syphilis. They were denied treatment, right? So you get that. So what I'm trying to do, hopefully over time, is when you go to these community groups, they're historian buffs, but a lot of it is not academic. So I'm trying to, without being, it's a relationship, that hopefully I try to root out the bad history and get people the skills to, be a little more conscious about what they say and what they mean about history. But at the same time, I know the community is what gets me here, the protest, the sacrifice. So it's a complementary relationship. Without their protest, you're not here because the university is not going to wake up and say, oh, my bad, we need Black studies. I'm sorry. No, when they're outside with them signs, folks who didn't finish high school, all up and down them streets, opens doors for me. I totally get it. Now, I hope what the reciprocity is, as a historian, when I come to an event and I say, Tuskegee syphilis, that's not right. When I root out the bad history, I'm not viewed as some outside Uncle Tom. I'm trying to help people understand you don't need to make stuff up. There's enough history in itself for Black people have experienced, right? You don't need those extra stories of conspiracy to talk about African American. You don't need that. You don't need all that. The facts speak for themselves. You don't need to go into conspiracy mode. Lynching's evidence. Discrimination's evidence, right? You don't need to hype that up. And that's why I try to separate when they look at these videos from YouTube and who's that person's trying to make money. That's what they do, right? They make money off of folks who don't know. You see what I mean? I'm trying to help you be a more critical consumer of knowledge, even including me. You can check me. That's fine. But those folks are there to make money that run around them YouTube tapes and hidden colors and all these conspiracy. Look at the dollar bill and all that stuff. That's how they eat. What I'm trying to tell you is, let's try. I'll make you a critical consumer. That's all. That what I call barbershop history. But again, it's a conversation, right? And that's what I think. Like again, we lost our dear colleague Patricia Hilliard-Nunn, who really had a lot of connections. So I'm trying to build, now again, some people I would say she's definitely, and it's relative, right? Whose commitment to community is relative, right? Hers has very deep. Some is more like, mid-range, and some are relative, right? So for me, I think hers are very deep in community stuff, right? Organizing events, and you could tell by how people responded, because community people respond to authentic folks, right? You can just tell. You can tell the one who comes in, they kind of respond, but your commitment is relative. You might do a talk, Black History Month, you have 5 or 6 talks, but she did the actual work stuff. There's levels to it. I'll be honest, there's levels. My wife is more than I am. She's more engaged in community than I am. Relative, she's more engaged, more ready to, we need to, I'm more practical, right? We need to go knock on doors. Let's get 1,000. I'm like, dang, but yeah, right? Which is different like that, right? So for her, just, there's an incumbent, you should run. But statisticians will tell you out of 100, 80 ain't gonna vote. Well, let's knock on doors anyway. Me, I'm more like, but it's fine. So I look at it that way. So there's community folks, my wife is more engaged than I am. I think for me, once I figure this whole thing out, but I also have commitment to the director stuff here. So my commitment is going to be relatively different than someone else. So again, like I tell students, in the civil rights movement, everybody has a role, right? Everyone can't do everything. That's a lie. But what can you do, and do it as best you can? So for me, we might have a scholar in here is engaged. There's scholarship. They go out to all the functions. They get the phone call. They be that person. Me, I might be more, I talk to the person who's second in command, who whatever. Then you have some people, I don't even know who that person is, but they're committed for students on campus. It's okay, but you have a role. Because some folks aren't comfortable in the communities, right? Some folks aren't. So it doesn't, for some folks, they don't operate as smoothly in communities for whatever reason. You see what I mean? Because in their mind, they might think they don't think I'm this or that. While for other people, they love community stuff. They are very comfortable with folks from the quote unquote the hood, the cut. They just flow through it, no problem. Their nerves don't get upset with vernacular English. They don't feel the type of way when people, cut off G's and verbs, or they're like cool with it. While for some people, it really irks their skin. They just can't. That's it. So for me, community is important, but I think knowing your role in that. And if you're, now I'm saying there's levels of commitment all over the place, but I think what works best for you. If you're a speaker for Black History Month and King and all that, that's what works for you, fine. If you really want to engage in all your service-based community, I support that. I don't like doing University Service Day. I want to help the people. I support it. Now, when I say help, those ones really engage. They go to the meetings, they organize, they're out there on Saturday. I take that for service. For the faculty, I'm just engaged with student service all my time because I know these students need some help. I'm good with that. You see what I'm saying? So it's really about what's your strength for me. That's how I do leadership. Put you in the best place to succeed. Why would I put you in somewhere you're going to fail? And then at the same time, hoping the areas that you're not strong, over time, you improve those areas. So you're not so one-sided, because you never know when I need you to do something else. You see what I mean? So you always want to be prepared, but at minimum, you're strong at this. Let's work on the other two over time, because over time, you might have a change of attitude. You might want to shift from community. I'm going to focus on more scholarship 5 years in the line. You see what I mean? Because whatever. So that's how I lead. I lead by your strength, hoping at the same time you're working on your area, you're improving your areas of weakness, right? So you're not just what I call a one-trick pony, like those Republicans in Connecticut now who are running just on, Democrats hate police. That's their one-trick pony. That's not nuanced. You just run on one issue. I don't like that. I'm just good at this. We all do it, but you have to be flexible in the world. You know that's a skill. I'm just going to do X. I'm not going to do anything else. The world doesn't work that way, right? We wish it would, but it doesn't. You got to be good at multiple things, especially when we look at Black Studies Department. You just can't do one thing because we don't have the history like history and English. They can do one thing. I'm just going to write books. They can do that. We have a dual mission. I got to write books and engage the community who got me here in the first place. History got there because it's history. They have to struggle. They planted it right there. Philosophy didn't have to struggle. They just plop it right in. We have to struggle. We have to constantly prove that this is legit, even though it's 2020, because there's still a devaluation of Black knowledge unless it's shared by elite scholars from Harvard and Yale. When Gates says it, then we think it's valuable. When Kendi says it, right? But there's tons of other scholars doing this great work, but only those few get access to New York Times, Wall Street, MSNBC. And then for many of my white liberal colleagues, they speak for all Black people. Then when you critique them, they're mad at you. You don't agree with Kendi? No. Some of it I don't agree with. Then they get mad at me. You just hate him because he's rich. No. It's because I'm saying they're saying something that most white people like, which means something. Right? Let's be honest, right? It's if they're clapping, must be something. Oh, I get it. We're all racist. Okay, I feel better. Right? No, it's structures. So now, if I know everyone feels that Black people are lazy, why am I mad? But if it came on an angle of structure and complicity, then no matter how much Black people feel they're lazy, end of the day, if you don't do something, it doesn't matter. I don't like that book because it's making me do something. The way it's posed now, it's making us all do therapy. All of us are not racist, right? That's not dealing with structures, my friend. But that's why I'm doing what he does, not knocking his hustle, but I get it. When they win them Pulitzers, like Nicole Hannah-Jones, most white people are on those awards. So again, it goes back to demography and numbers and access and money. We just got to be honest about it. So I'm not knocking what they do, but you have to think about it. I know a ton of scholars out here do some great work, but it's only read amongst, academic eggheads because it's truth telling and it'll make the same person who loves Kendi be angry because they're going to be called out as you're part of the problem, right? You're benefiting. Oh, well, I give the NAACP. I get that, but it's a system. You see what I mean? But you don't want to hear that. You want to hear how you're doing such great stuff and everyone's complicit into something. I'm complicit in not talking out more against, what against transgender violence or whatever. But who wants to hear that? You want to feel good about yourself. And Kendi's book makes people feel good about themselves. We're all racist. Thank you. Right? Rather than power. No matter how racist Black people think, we don't own the major corporations. You don't like that book because, oh man, that means I got to do something? No, I don't like that. Right? That's what it says. You have to do something. Me? Yeah. Oh, no, like, but if we're all racist, and that's why it's doing that's why it's doing relatively well. I mean, let's just be honest. I get it. It's fine, but we should have the same space to say what I'm saying and get the same coverage on that New York Times. And let people decide and not just be anointed. Remember Tanasi Coach? Remember him a few years ago? Mm-hmm. What happened? Where is he now? See how it works? Under Obama, he blew up, right? Now where is he? He wrote some novel. What happened? You see what I'm saying? Then he became the expert on reparations. Black folks were talking about reparations for years. But for many white people, it wasn't until Coates. That's what gets me angry. At least shout them out. That's like intellectual appropriation, I call it. You see, now it's Coates. Under Obama, he killed it. Under Trump, I don't see him now. So Kendi's hot now. 2 years from now, who's next? We want Black studies to be a consistent sounding board of intellectual understanding history and where it's been and where is it going, and not this type of who's the hot person, blah, 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 and then you jump onto somebody else. But what about the people who've done this before that don't get the credit? That's what just gets me upset about this stuff. And I get the system, and that, Henry Louis Gates is not a historian. He's a literary guy, but they put historian in the New York Times. So when he writes an op-ed, he gets instant access to the New York Times. I know tons of people do tons of work, no access. So he becomes the spokesperson for Black people. But for white people, they get multiple perspectives. There's Meacham. I see them all in talk shows. They get multiple perspectives on white life. For us, we get like 9, right? And the problem is that what I call the white literati, think they really speak for all 40 million Black people. I'm like, yo, that's kind of insulting. Right? He speaks for himself, but not for everybody. But if you want to get in the game, it's almost like coffee break. Should I go in today? No, just well, I think it's great, because the amount of attention you're gonna get, because there's so much passion in that book that's hot. The amount of attention you'll get from the coffee dinner. What? You don't agree with Kendi? Well, I think it's just too much, because they're gonna come. But have you read this, this, this? Oh, I never heard of them. That's my point, right? You mean never heard of so-and-so? Never heard of them. That's my point. You see what I mean? So it becomes like something that middle class people do as some sort of like status type of thing, that you're reading the hot black book that in your circles is like show you're real liberal and stuff. That when you go to, did you read Kendi? Oh yeah, and everybody reads. I'm like, I get it. So it's one of those, again, people will say, but that's just, and he's not the first. It's just how these systems are structured. Same for women's studies, same for Latinx studies. It's that one or two. What was that book that came out a few years ago? The memoir, the Latin one that people just trashed. I forgot. It was a memoir by, I think she wasn't even Latinx. I forgot the name of the book, but it came. You got it.
Yeah, I have it.
A lot of heat, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember that. I have that book, though. I know what book you're talking about.
See what I'm saying, right? And what was the problem? Something about, was it authentic or some sort of, the person caught a lot of heat for that. So that became the one. So I'm guessing within 3 months, when it's at Costco's and BJ's, that becomes the one Latinx that everybody reads. Then when you critique it, there's a problem with you. What do you mean you don't agree with that? Well, have you read I think that. And that's how we still got so much ways to go in terms of how we look at Black knowledge. Latinx knowledge is still not valued the same. That we can shrink stuff down to one person. That's embarrassing. But when we look at the Greeks and the Romans, they'll give you a whole plethora of Greek philosophers. You don't just strike it down to Rousseau and the Enlightenment. Well, we'll just read Rousseau. You got to read Montesquieu, Hobbes, Leviathan. You know the list of books, all of them. You don't just say one, you got to read all the theories. But for Black Latinx, you got one person. Just read Gates. That's it. Yeah, that's problematic. So we got ways to go in this in terms, that's what I'm trying to push in terms of just asking simple questions. Why is it for Western Civ, no one says just read John Locke? But for African American, just read Kendi, just read Coach, just read the hot person of the month. Why do we do that? Great question. I'm still trying to figure that out. But that's some of the things I'm trying to change in here as well.
So I only have 2 more questions.
Go ahead.
So what advice would you give to like minoritized students like coming into college and like trying to like, get their PhD, get their graduate degree?
That's a great question. So what I tell students, I say, you know what? The PhD saved me from me, all right? Going to grad school, asking questions, gender, class, sexual orientation, right? Because I'm the university is a space where you have to engage those populations, become self-reflective, and realize, man, the world, the way it's set up, is socialized to make you anti-human. If you're not, whether it's religion, your interpretation of Christianity, like Frederick Douglass said, it's Christianity of his land, it's Christianity of Christ. Christianity of the land is homophobic, is racist, is sexist. But until I got to the university, you never questioned that. Sexual orientation, until I got to the university, where I told my wife's film, a lot of lesbian filmmakers, and that, I didn't question that stuff. Gender norms. When I first got married, my son can stay out till midnight. The girl's got to be in at 9 o'clock. That's sexist. No clue. So getting this degree, right, saved me from me, whether it's masculinity, whether it's sex, these other constructs gave me the information to be self-reflective and be open to challenge society and all this stuff. That's the beauty of being a critical thinker. Does everyone need to get a PhD? No, but I think with the grad school, you start asking these questions. So for now, I have a better, and you always know you don't know everything, you're always learning. I'm humble to know I don't know everything, but I'm constantly rethinking stuff. You see what I mean? But unfortunately, so when students get to campus, you're thinking a job. I'm beyond, I get it, but that's the problem. See, not thinking of being reflective. So in other words, you're gonna embrace all the norms on TV that you've heard in K through 12, get to the job, and be mad that your cubicle's next to someone who's Islam. You'll be all in your feelings. Or the next guy's an atheist, you're gonna be all in your feelings. Or next guy's married to a trans, you're gonna be all in your feelings. Or someone's bisexual, all in your feelings. Because you didn't take time in undergrad to engage in humanities and to realize these are human beings. And from a Marxist perspective, y'all all exploited labor in the first place. Y'all share more in common. So you better stop tripping. But that's the problem. And I get it. You want a job. But I'm saying use these 4 years to take class and become a better human. I know it works for me. Like I said, save me from me. Because more like how we're socialized, heteronormative male, 6'7", just follow the hook, line, and sinker stuff. Doesn't mean I've got and beat up gay. I'm never a violent person, but you still have a side. I'll ask a question, why, rather than human beings. So it's spectrums on it, right? Doesn't mean that I'll go out and hate women, but why are they upset all the time? I don't beat women. What do you mean I'm sexist? That doesn't make sense. It's a system. You see what I mean? Or I made it. Why don't poor people make it? So I don't say those silly things because of education. I came from Corp City, got a PhD. What's wrong with these people? And you hear a lot of internalized minorities say that stuff because they weren't educated. They just focused on that job and then the focus on humanities. That's a waste of time. I need my accounting degree. No one needs that. Then you're in the accounting office, then you scared everybody, you're sexist, and it's on degrees. It's relative. It's not the egregious, it's like relative. You didn't take time to read and engage it. Now, you might learn it through experience. Find out your son is gay, your daughter's this, that might open you up, but use this time. I mean, I can see it, right? It's a whole different feeling when you just understand human beings, man. You're not all stressed out. It's undocumented. I don't get scared if people see Spanish in the elevator. What do I care? I'm not that important. They're not trying to get me. I don't do anything. That's fear. When they speak Spanish, you're all nervous. Well, you done something wrong? Then why are you nervous? No one's going to come get you. Most acts of violence isn't random. And don't fall for the Trump when they get the one. That's aberrations. You see what I mean? So for me, the PhD saved me from me, made me a better human being because it exposed me to individuals, populations I would never have been exposed to, well, not never, but engage with. That's different. You can be exposed, but then it's engaging. When you have colleagues who have a male or female partner who's engaging, human beings have the same damn problems. Daycare, scheduling, people get on your nerve. That's the university, right? Going to daycare, you see mommies and daddies. You see stay-home dads. I knew a stay-home dad in Connecticut. Man, he ain't no man. You don't I say stuff like that. Hey, brother, when's the next kindergarten meeting? Yeah, I mean, I'm not tripping. But if I'd had this PhD, I'd be like, yo, I'd have been talking about it. What do you mean you're not working? What do you mean you're, see? That's the problem. You see what I mean? Or watching the show Pose. I don't watch that 30 years ago. Turn that off. Like it's gonna make me, trans all that nonsense. Education is a beautiful thing, but we have to somehow find a way to get students that's why I try to sell that, to really think about, you can do two things at once. And it'll just make you a better person, not all uptight all the time. Hating everybody, just full of, like when I see Donald Trump, just full of anger and just hating everybody. I have so much heart for hate. That's not like Dr. King, but I get it. When I was younger, I didn't get it, but I get it. That's a lot of energy just to hate everybody. I can't, it doesn't make sense. Because for me, I see humanity. We're struggling. It's tough. It's existential out here. Bills, this, that. That's what I see. So that's why I want students to come in here, take advantage of that, take advantage of IBC, the Latino, take advantage of those spaces because you need them. And guess what? When you become professional, that's what I tell them, it's going to be the same thing. You go to a business meeting, guess what you're going to do? Run to the black people. You go to dinner, right? You say hi to so-and-so, you're going to do, I'm to the same, you can get to the professional world, say, you know what? These systems still exist on a professional level. Go to a conference. When you get there, you're gonna look for the Latino people of color crowd. Hey, you're gonna run right over there with the wine. Hey man, how you doing? So once you get, so why not? It's not racist. It's how these systems are set up. But it's what empowers you. It's what makes you feel normal because you're like, is it only me? But did he say that? Oh yeah. So what? Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll help you through. I'll mentor you. You see? But I think for some of our students, and I was told at home, well, you got to do this. I'm like, listen, I'm telling you, this doesn't stop when you leave college. In fact, it's more sinister when you're professional because you assume, well, they graduate, they liberal, please. It's cutthroat out in them streets. I'm telling you. And it'll be a nice cut. Hey, Omar, up there, right? But we give you the tools to, anticipate on how to engage in Black studies, in Latino, Latinx studies, the tools. So education, not just for education's sake, making society better and engaging a system that's racist and sexist. And how do you engage that? And also, how do you learn how to, which I'm learning, how to, case by case, right? You can't say all people this, all that. It's how you learn to engage case by case. So I'm learning to get to the point where you can case by case, I call it, right? Because look at the history of this country. John Brown was a white dude, John Brown's on my top 10 list. He wanted to end slavery, and not just by talking. He's whiter than snow. Another white guy took a fugitive slave. He ended up dying in prison. Virginia Dern. Now, there's a long list of white people that put more work in than a lot of black people. So I try to explain that in history because we think racism is genetic. And there's black people, Clarence Thomas, Candace Owen. They're horrible for black people. It's all up here, right? You know it is, right? It's what's up here, right? There are black people who will hurt black people because of their policy decisions. There are white people who in this history have done more for black people than black people, who even claim they're woke. Let's give them credit. That shows that racism is not genetic. It also shows just because you're black doesn't mean you're woke or as woke as you think you are, just talking. What are you doing? You see what I mean? So I try to get students, you know, when they say this, those big overgeneralizations, well, how do you explain John Brown? Oh, I thought he was black. That's my point. In fact, he's on Showtime. You see, I got to rent it. Showtime did a thing on John Brown, but I haven't heard any reviews, but I think the downside only thing is because they paint him as crazy John Brown. And I'm like, that's why I got published. You see what I mean? Because that was all the critique, that John Brown was crazy. Now, if he was a fugitive slave catcher, he would have been posted as crazy. He'd have been a hero. That's my point, you see? So Showtime made it based on the ignorant view that John Brown literally was crazy, literally EDP, right? Rather than he fought to end slavery against a crazy racist slave system as a rational human being who said when they about to kill him, if I would have fought on beside of the power, I would have been a hero. That's not a crazy statement. If he was a fugitive slave catcher, there'd be a John Brown holiday. But to get the show moved on Showtime, let's paint him as crazy. See, Hollywood is slick because they want to make money. Again, in a woke world, Harriet, you can make a film, but still slanted towards, see what I'm saying? Hollywood. See, that's why I try to teach kids these skills. So yes, we have John Brown, but rooted in a misperception by a book written by William Steinrock in 1968 that painted Nat Turner's crazy and these dudes are crazy rather than fighting for freedom. But Robert E. Lee ain't crazy. Come on now. Stonewall Jackson ain't crazy. Those militia dudes ain't crazy. Now they're going to use that to justify, but that's the point I'm making. So when I watched the John Brown thing, I saw that, okay, I get it, because he's a crazy dude. So he's always screaming and crazy rather than I'm trying to end some slavery. You get in my way, you're going to catch a couple of your back. You see what I mean? So but I get it. So that's why I try to teach students, like watch historical films, creative licensing, and that what I call the narrative. So the narrative is most people see him as crazy and we want to make money, right? If we do it, unless it's a documentary, but we put more money to this, we want to sell it, we have to shift it that way intentionally. You see what I mean, right? That was a documentary, you can be more academic, but who watches documentaries? 200 people, but we make it a show on Showtime. We want more people, more white people, who are the majority, to watch it. He's just a crazy white man. Rather than empowering, you know what? I don't agree with that part, but maybe I can empower myself to do something about the system or see the price you pay, not meaning in death, but social marginalization by getting engaged in woke work. Many white people pay a price for that. Is it worth it? That's the point. But we're going to paint him as crazy. So now I'm not crazy. I'm not going to do that. So I won't do anything. You see what I'm saying? Or I'm happy what I do is literally nothing but talk. I'm not going to go to my uncle and say, yo, son, I'm not saying that stuff you're saying doesn't make sense. I'm not going to challenge grandpa at Thanksgiving. Yo, that's garbage. Because it's too much pressure. Right? I'm not going to my church. Why don't we talk about racism, sexism in church, Pastor John? I'm tired of salvation. Let's get heaven on earth for black and brown people. Son, you got to get out of here. Right? You know what? Take your front seat, go to the back, let's get out. That's why systems function. I get it. The social trade-off is it's just a lot of drama that people don't want to deal with. You want, life is hard already. Why am I adding more bricks to my back? Right? You want to go to church. Hey, Dave, everything's great. Uh-oh, there goes Dave. Who wants that? But it's like this. I got a new point, right? Now, get your last question. If there's a lynching, right? There's the 5 people that do the lynching, the rope, right? There's more that watch and many who are silent. So the many, I wasn't there. I didn't put the rope. I didn't even go. But you didn't say anything. That's the majority, right? That's the majority, right? Few do the lynching, the rope, all that stuff. More watch. They might shoot into the body. Many stayed home. They were silent. That's the majority. But in their mind, I at least didn't do the rope. I didn't go watching my Sunday's best, but I didn't do anything about it. That's life. Whether any ism, racism, homophobia, right? The zero is the violent. That's the egregious part. That's zero. That's the few. The next group is the more. And then the many are silent, like those militia idiots, right? They're there. Then you got the silent majority who kind of like, but I'm not crazy enough because I don't want to go to jail. I got kids. And I don't want to go in the black now. I might get punched in the face if I get to the wrong place. So I think that's how you look at systems. That's what I explain to students, you see? So there's many who are silent, but I wasn't there, but you didn't say anything. At least I didn't go. And that's everybody, right? For men and sexism. Well, I don't hit women. Well, thank you. Have you said anything to other guys? Nah. And that's how systems, function. You know what I mean? And you get that. You're a smart guy. What's your next question?
It's actually my last question. It's just, do you have anything else you would like to say in an interview I just didn't touch on that you?
No, I pretty much said it all. I think I'm looking forward to, now this is for your honors thesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Ortiz, who's your
advisor?
Yeah.
Is Dr. Ortiz.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, pretty much, hey, I just try to be a straight shooter, my friend. Again, I like using my systems analysis and stuff. So, I call no one out if I don't have to, but how do we get students to understand systems, right? How do we move away from racism as prejudice and these simplistic binary and really get into, now again, I know I'm 52, you're 18, you're 19, but hopefully through these classes, there's a consistent message of systems and inequities and complicity. And let's really engage that and not just, the individual model that we love in this country so much. The one poor kid that makes it, we love that story, but 8 of them didn't make it. They're just lazy. Oh, here we go with that. We love that. I'm so sick of that stuff, drives me crazy. Or our worship of billionaires and P. Diddy and billionaires not going to save us. They're not. Oprah does great work, but you can't wait for the billionaires. You got to get out here and work, you know what I mean? Or my black capitalist friend, we just need businesses. Bruh, capitalism doesn't end capitalism. Capitalists love capitalists, right? That's their best friend. Diddy don't scare nobody. They love Jay-Z because billionaires don't want to lose their money. He can come to the table. In fact, I'm glad he's a billionaire, they're probably saying. What they hate is folks like us. You know what I mean? So that's what I want students to engage because those are the ideas you hear. I'm doing a thing on Achebe and Baldwin, and I heard Hosea Williams, who was a civil rights activist. This is post-79. Well, because of desegregation, we need more black business, the whole black economic capitalism thing, but it's more complicated than that. Black capitalism will not save black. Now, there's no socialism around the corner. I'm not saying don't start a black business, but don't sell it as a panacea. That's all I'm saying. Don't sell it as everyone needs to open a business. No, most people are going to work for people, right? But the point is that that's just one avenue in the struggle. You open up a barbershop. You open up a business, but every person is not going to own a business, and black wealth is not going to change systemic inequality. There's more wealth in black communities now than ever. We're still racist and George Floyd still died. That's the point. Systemic analysis using history and not all this stuff be floating. Just drives me crazy, but that's what we're here for. And how do we engage students in that? So I'm hoping being here, having events, what you're doing, and this comes through these conversations more so than the classroom. I find when I have students in IBC, we go on road trips, they get to know me more, they open up more. I think that's where the learning comes in, to be honest with you, right? More so than the stuffy classroom. There might be white students, they feel some type of way, but we out on that road, we in the DC Museum, or we're here, and we're just, Dr. Ken, blah, blah, we just open up. That's where the real learning starts. That's what I think. Those relationships, more so than the classroom, which is, staged and you're worried about what people think. No one's going to raise their hand. Oh, yeah, my uncle was an addict and this, and he ran numbers. No one's going to say that, right? Because you think I'm going to judge you. I don't care. But when we go on these road trips, you know me. Yeah, Dr. Ken, that's right. We read this thing in class. I think I had a grandmother. She was a numbers runner in Miami. Okay. Or I had an uncle. He's on the wrong side of the law and this and that. Okay, I don't care. Or I had a grandfather, he was so rich, white people were scared of him. Okay, But I don't like saying that because I don't want people to think I got money and this and that. But we can have those conversations. You know what I mean? That's what I look forward to, you know, or I like to ski and scuba dive. Oh, well, one of our professors, Dr. Stevens, is an official scuba diver. Well, you know, people don't think Black people can swim. I don't want to get into all that. That's why I want this to be that space. Because just you saying that just opens you, you're free because you're holding so much in because you're thinking about all this other stuff that really hampers your striving here. While for white kids, they just live. They do what the hell they want to do. Man, that's a good freedom. That's some freedom. That's some good stuff. You can just do what the hell you want to do. You want to do this, you want to do that. With African Americans, you're always thinking and always, that's stressful, as you know. Always, you just want to go to class and just live. And put your hand up and just say it. Well, you're like, did I say what I said? That's not living. Like Marvin Gaye's song, this ain't living. So hopefully through what I'm trying to do here, Dr. Ortiz is on board, administration's on board, we can keep moving. And hopefully once you graduate, I would always say, check in, emails to your dean, your college, whatever. Hey, is everything going with Latino, whatever? Just how's the center going? Always send emails, send a few pennies, and they'll just respond. Don't leave in bitterness because people in power like that. When you're not engaged and apathetic, on the one hand, they say it, but on the other hand, they're happy, right? We want everybody to vote in America. No, you don't, right? But they'll tell you that, but they don't want everybody voting because the Republicans will have a shot. You know that as well as I do. They know it. You know what I mean? That's why they hire these Russians to tell Black people don't vote, and these idiots are out here on radio programs. I saw on YouTube a Joe Biden video, and he said so-and-so. I don't know. I'm like, oh, Lord, Russians got him. I saw Kamala Harris. Everyone locked up Black people in the 90s. Everybody locked Black people up in the 90s. What's your point? The Russians are working overtime with those misinformation ads, and it drives me absolutely nuts. There's Black people out there telling you not to vote. The sexist, they Kamala Harris, well, she this, and they're just ignorant. And that drives, and they're doing the same, you know, it's the same in Latinx. It's the same thing. They're out there working overtime, telling your grandparents, your dad, your parents, these young millennials, they're not like you guys when you got here. When you got here, you worked hard. You didn't beg for nothing. Democrats want to give away stuff, and grandma and dad gonna vote for the Republicans, right? There's a generation, I know there's a generational gap, Latin voters, they go after who are Republicans, who went back and forth on this myth of, when you came here, first of all, you exploited, right? We sucked it up. These young people don't want to work like grandpa. We were out there picking oranges, making no, nah, son, we were exploited. And we want labor unions. And I'm not picking them damn oranges for $1 an hour. That's what's wrong with you guys. That's how they get your grandparents. You shake your head because you know them too, right? That's how they get grandpa and them on that myth of when they came up. Rather than, son, I believe you, we want wages with benefits, and I'll be damn and vote with you. Right? Oh, they listen to hip hop. That's what's wrong with these kids. When we came up here, the family values, they can stall that. They hit the Catholicism on you. The women want choice, and they vote Republican. And that's why there's a big split with Latinx communities. Republicans have the older cats on that rhetoric that you guys are lazy. You're like the Black people begging the Democrats. I'm like, okay, grandpa, right? Where you from originally?
Me?
Yeah, you from Florida?
Yeah, I'm from Florida. I'm from a small farming town.
Okay. Yeah. So that rhetoric kind of rings a bell, like older Latino American, right? They came Republican back and on that whole that, you know, the younger ones aren't what they used to be, and y'all basically coming like Black people begging all sort of nonsense rather than wages, benefits, and health care. And I agree. I'm not picking that for $1 a day, Grandpa. You had to, but that's not progress. Well, back when, you know, and hopefully, you know, I heard Biden struggling with the Latinx vote and stuff, but hopefully young people step up. That's the difference, you know, 18 to 29, because they're going after older Latinx voters who, you know, now they're citizens. They want to close the door now. They should do it like me. I came in the Proctor and we went through and blah. Right? We want to get the DACA. That's what's wrong with those DACAs. They don't want to go through the process. No, because if I go home, I'm not getting back in. You know what I mean? Well, that's what's wrong. When we did it, y'all want to hear all that. Y'all want to hear that. I know that's what they're telling folks. They should trust the government. Internment camps, World War II. Hell nah. I ain't going nowhere because I don't trust them at all. You see what I mean? Even though they went to school, contributed to the economy, is so ruthless up in here. You just can't take that chance if you're a doctor. You can't. Well, I work at IBM. They would never let me not back in, please, because there's a mediocre white person who wants that job. Boom. Mediocre. You know what I mean? Right? Mediocre. Didn't even finish college, waiting for that job. Don't go anywhere. And that's the politics of not knowing history and not understanding nostalgia and sociology and not knowing history. That's how you fall victim to that stuff, that misinformation campaign. So now your grandfather, you're arguing all weekend at dinner because he's locked in, not understanding systems. And you're trying to say, Grandma, that's just not right, man. I'm trying to explain labor. And no, back when I was, and that's memory. See, that's not history. That's the thing. When you do oral history, see, that's how you have to dissect from memory, right? So I'll give you the last point of this, right? So memory is what? Back in the 50s, Black people were doing much better. I remember when I walked down the street, there was the barber, the doctor. You hear that, right? The Black poverty rate was 60% in 1950. Now it's 30% where you don't see a Black barber. Most people go to white stores. That's one of the biggest ironies in civil rights work, right? So memory says this ideal. Statistics say we're doing much better. So as an oral historian, how does one gauge that? And that's where you got to be careful. Because you saw a bunch of older African Americans, that's what we're going to tell you. It was better in 1950. Black people died earlier, right? Higher unemployment, less educated, memory, history. It's a real good, interesting stuff, right? So I know you interviewed those folks in Gainesville. They'll tell you that. Back in the 50s, the Black poverty rate was 60%. But I understand. I know. I can imagine what that looked like. Walk down the street. Hey, everybody, I get it. But they were still poor people, right? How many were going to college in 1950 African Americans? Smaller. So when you look at the quantifiable data, that gives me so when I look at oral history is that way. I look at it that way. I understand that memory, but then there's history and how do they collide? That's the only thing, right? Because they're going to tell you a memory is great, it's perfect. People were getting robbed. There was crime, right? They were human beings. And unfortunately, we're doing better, and it doesn't make sense. How can we do better when there's less Black? There are more Black businesses now than ever. See, again, it's just not, the data is just not making sense. Because I get what they're saying. That was a beautiful picture. Walk down, what's that street? Pleasant Avenue, it's great. Oh, it's great. But you look at the data, right? Do I want a whole block of businesses? Sure, it'd be great. But, so those are some of the things that when you do oral history, I try to, but I let people speak. I don't, I just contextualize. So I would do is, like most oral people would make this argument. However, if you look at the data, makes us reconsider or think about how memory works. And we usually like to memorize good things, right? I remember I was poor, and so memory is kind of like, but it does paint a good picture of what it was like. I get that, but at the same time, I don't want us to think that, to be honest, I'm not living in 1920. There was no Wi-Fi. They were lynching Black people whenever they just come and just lynch me. I'm not, you can go, I'm not, right?
Yeah.
Think about it, they can just punch me in the face, don't do anything, no recourse. So when people say it was better back in the 50s, I just take it with a grain of, I do, the elders, yes, I understand. I'm not going to get into and that's the other thing, we do community work, so that's the other thing, right? Your academic hat, you have to be careful. If you come in there, right, that can get you in trouble. You open know what you're talking about. You're not going to win. You 90-some years old. I got to bow down. You leave me 90 in this country, you good with me, right? But I can't come in there and tell him, well, Mother Jones, the poverty rate was 60% in 1950, and they were just lynching and killing Black people whenever they want. I still think we're doing way better today, even though there's like 2 Black businesses. I just can't diss Mother Jones. She's 95 years old. I can't go in on the elders. And elder respect comes out of our traditions, right? Elders, hey, because we understand to live 90 in this country, that's a victory, because this country's rough. And to survive this craziness, you can probably say anything you want to damn say, right? I'm no way a 50-year-old guy going to tell you that's wrong. I've earned the years to do it, but that's how I function, and that's how these things work. So work in the community, if you understand, if you don't, it's not for you. You very academic, you can't take that, understand, and be humble, it's not for you. What are they saying? No, I'm telling you, don't do it. Oh, they're not going to want you to come back. That guy, John, I don't like him. He's saying the right thing, but that's not the space for it, because it's a different space. You've been with elders, you interview, right? It's a different space. You're learning their history, and you're respecting that they made it through this mess called America, and you just want to understand that. but it's not a space where it's an academic, well, here's the poverty rates, here's this. It's a story. I want to hear how you survived Gainesville in 1950. I could imagine people calling you all type of names and all this. Oh my God, you know, and that's why I like students. That's why I do like the oral history that you do. When they hear those stories, how people just disrespect you for no reason. You had to sit there and tolerate that. So it kind of like, you know, we like to say things aren't better, but come on now. You know it good in there. You walk downtown Gainesville in 1950, it can go sideways any minute. He looked at my wife. What? Bang. I mean, that's crazy. You were living under such racial etiquette. I could imagine your blood pressure just being, you got to walk all crazy, put your head down and be apologetic for everything. Man, that's crazy. That's why I respect them that way, because that wasn't easy, right? And now we can at least walk across the street. I can look at a wife, looking at her like that, and I'm going, well, I think I can. I don't know, the guy in the park in Central Park. I don't know, you know, but I enjoyed this, my friend, you know, and hopefully I can help, and looking forward to your project, and hopefully next semester, I don't know, high flex, and I don't know if I'm gonna see anybody, you know, but my office is always open. You know, we have a system, it's big enough we can do distancing and stuff. So you want to come through next semester, whatever, that's cool. But, you know, good luck to your project.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed this interview. It's super helpful. I got a lot of stuff that I can use.